talking about our mobile devices. Now, I'm not going to take a long time. I want to just share for a few minutes. And then you guys are going to go to your small groups and talk about this for a little bit. But I have a quick question. How many of you guys have or own or have access to at least one mobile device? Mobile device would be an iPod, an iPhone, or any sort of smartphone, an iPad, or any sort of tablet. Thank you. Anything like that, a mobile device that you can use to access internet or do that kind of stuff.
What about like a stupid phone that doesn't access internet?
That's not a mobile device. Sure it is. Yeah, it's still mobile. It can be a stupid phone as well. Stupid phones count too. All right, good. Keep your hand up if you have more than one mobile device that you have access to or own. Keep your hand up if you have more than two. More than three. More than four. More than 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Put your hands down. You guys have way too many. All right. So here's what's going to happen. Tonight we're talking about the idea of setting guidelines for our mobile devices. Okay? Because while mobile devices are great, and yes, I love them too, if we do not learn to set guidelines for them, they can become very dangerous. We're going to quickly go over the 4 guidelines that we're going to talk about tonight. And then you guys are in your groups are going to kind of take some more time and discuss them a little bit more. All right? First guideline is we need to learn to set boundaries. Boundaries are very important when it comes to our mobile devices. As it is anything. Everything should have a boundary. Okay? Anything that you do too much becomes an addiction. It doesn't matter what it is. So we need to learn to set boundaries when it comes to our mobile devices. Proverbs chapter 16. You guys open your Bibles to Proverbs chapter 16. I'll give you a second to get there. Proverbs chapter 16. Verse 16. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 16. And as you guys are going there, I want to keep talking about this idea of boundaries. Here's the deal. We need to know and we need to understand and learn when it's okay to be on a mobile device and when we need to put the mobile device down. Okay? How many of you guys know somebody that you actually know what the top of their head looks like better than their face? Because they're always looking down. They're always staring at their mobile device or looking at it, and you know the top of their head better than you actually know their face. That's someone who needs to learn some boundaries. We all need to learn boundaries. It's good at the end of the day to put your mobile device away for a while. It's good to turn it off. They turn back on, I promise. You can shut it off and it will come back again. I dare you to try it sometime. It's a scary thing. Like, oh, what do I do? The screen went black. Don't worry, it'll come back on. Proverbs 16, verse 16 and 17 says this. You guys are there, follow along. How much better to get wisdom than gold? To get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. The idea there is that it's better to be smart, to understand boundaries, to have wisdom and understanding and knowing right from wrong and figuring things out than it is to have lots of stuff. It's better to have understanding and wisdom than it is gold and silver. Look, it continues on. The highway of the upright turns aside from evil. Whoever guards his way preserves his life. There's this idea that there are guardrails, that we are on a path and we have to stay on that path. We have to have boundaries that protect us from going too far, from spending too much time on our mobile devices. If we want to, we could spend all our time on our mobile device, and that's not good. It's not healthy. Okay? So we need to make sure, first boundary when it comes to mobile devices is we need to set boundaries. Second one, you guys turn over to Ecclesiastes. It's the very next book. I'll give you a second to find it. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. The second guideline is we need to learn to connect with people in person. Okay? There is nothing wrong. What? Just go to chapter 4 for now. I'll tell you what verse in a minute. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Yes, I'll tell you what verse in a minute. We need to make sure that we are connecting with people in person. There's nothing wrong with texting people and continuing your conversation. If someone lives far away, it's an easy way to connect with them. I can talk with my parents. They live all the way down in Pennsylvania. I can talk with friends of mine that live all the way across the America. I was recently texting a friend of mine who lives down in Haiti. So mobile devices are cool. Having that ability is a very cool thing. It's made our world much smaller and simpler and easier to connect with people around the world. But we need to make sure that we have more connections in person than we do on our mobile device. We've got to make sure that we're building actual, real, in-person relationships, not just relationships on a screen, because it lacks something. There's still a loneliness. Even when you're texting lots of people, you can still be alone and feel very lonely. You need to have other people around you. Human contact is a very good thing, as long as you don't hug me. In the vicinity is a good thing. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. Verses 9 through 12. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. So when we're by ourselves, even though we have this idea, this ability through mobile devices and social media, we think we're really connected, but a lot of times we're doing it on our own. And so we're still by ourselves. What?
What's a toil?
Toil means hard work. Okay? So when you're doing something difficult, you're working hard, it's better to have two people than just doing it by yourself, because they help you. Okay? Continue on. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not easily or quickly broken. We want friendships. We need relationships. We're created for relationships. And they have to be in person. They can't only be on mobile devices, or else they're not complete relationships. Now, my wife and I, we text all the time. But if that's all we did, we'd have a very bad relationship. I need to make sure I'm spending more time with her in person than I am texting her on my phone. So we need to make sure that we have connections with people in person. Number 3, the third things. Turn over to 2 Timothy chapter 2. 2 Timothy chapter 2. And I'll tell you the verse again in a minute. The third guideline for mobile devices we need to understand is we need to allow for accountability. We can't do everything in secret and let nobody else know what we're doing. Because when we live a life of secrecy where nobody else is holding us accountable and knows what we're doing, we can do some things that are very dangerous and very bad, and nobody's going to stop us because nobody knows. We need to make sure that we have accountability. On all of my mobile devices, as well as on my laptop, I have a program that sends emails to my wife and to Pastor John of websites that I look at. And so therefore, they find out if I ever go somewhere that I probably shouldn't go. And so they get this email, and then I've got to answer all their questions. That keeps me in times when I'm being tempted, or I see a link and I wonder what that's like. Yeah, I don't want to answer all my wife's questions and answer all of Pastor John's questions. So I don't go there. I avoid that. It's accountability. We got to make sure, because we all are tempted and we all give in to sin, we have to set up accountability to help us. Mobile devices are great. You have the world at your fingertips. But not everything in the world is good. Some things in this world you need to stay away from. But if you have nobody else knowing, it's easy to use your mobile device to go wherever you want and do whatever you want without anybody knowing. It's very dangerous. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 22 says this: Flee youthful passions and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. So it tells us what we're supposed to pursue after. Things that are good, righteous. Pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace. That's the opposite of evil and things that drag us away from the Lord. But then look at the second half. It says, along with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. Do it with others who are also seeking the Lord. That's the idea of accountability. You don't live this life on your own. You have relationships, and you need to make sure your relationships are relationships that help you follow after Christ, not pull you away from Christ. That's the idea of accountability. Okay? We need to make sure that at least one other person can ask us questions, can check our phone. We're not always deleting things when we're done. That's a bad sign. Okay? The fourth one, 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Last verse we're going to look at, 1 Corinthians chapter 10. The fourth guideline is we need to use our devices for good. We need to use our devices for good. Like I said, the world is at your fingertips with mobile devices. It's amazing the things that we can do. I mean, I remember when I was in college, none of this existed. I went and bought a pager because that was so cool. It was really just annoying is what it was. Finally, they started coming out with cell phones that were affordable towards the end of my college, when I was in college. They started coming out with what was called PDAs at the time. But that was nothing compared to mobile devices now. And most of them couldn't access the internet. Texting was barely available. Okay, and it was expensive to text. You paid per text. There was no texting plan. There was no unlimited texting. It was like 25 cents a text. So I had to limit myself to I only did 30 texts a month because I didn't want to have to spend more. It was a lot of money. So texts were it's not like now where you can just send them like crazy and it doesn't matter. Okay? But we need to use our mobile devices for good. This is very similar to the last one. The idea that we need to set up accountability, we need to have relationships, we need to be careful where we're going and what we're using them for. There are so many good things that you can use your mobile devices for. So many opportunities on there, so many ways to connect with people, to talk about things, to share your faith. There are more ways to be creative than ever before. Anybody can make videos that are high quality now. Okay, there's so many good things you can do. But like I said, the world is at your fingertips, and there's a lot of bad there too. So we need to make sure when we get mobile devices, we need to decide in our head, I'm going to use this device for good, not for things that are wrong. I'm going to use it for good. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31. So whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. At the end of the day, that's what matters, the glory of God. Do you have relationships that give God glory? Are you using your mobile devices that give God glory? Are you going places that God would be glorified? How often? If it's consuming the vast majority of your time, then that's becoming an idol to you and you are worshiping your mobile devices because you're using them so much. If you don't know how to talk to somebody unless you send them a text, not a good sign. Okay, if your mom comes in the room and says you want some cookies and you text her back and you're sitting right there, not a good sign. You might need to put it down for a little bit and take a break from your mobile device. Okay? We got to make sure we have guidelines for this. I was thinking about this the other day because you guys are growing up with mobile devices. First generation that's growing up with them. I didn't have them when I was a kid. You guys are the first generation where it's a normal thing to have mobile devices. And everybody has one. And I was thinking about this the other day. I was at my son's baseball practice. And I was watching all the parents. And all the parents were looking down at their mobile devices while the kids are out there at practice. And my wife and I had a conversation. She's like, hey, tonight when you take them to practice, don't text me a lot. Just watch them. I'm like, oh, all right, I'll do that. And I'm thinking to myself, man, this is going to be really boring. Right? What am I going to do for 2 hours? What was crazy was my son looked over at me constantly to see if I was watching him. And I kept thinking to myself, because other kids were looking at their parents, and their parents never knew that they were looking at them. And I started thinking about this, is like, are we training our children to ignore their children? Are you guys growing up thinking it's okay to ignore everyone around you because the mobile device gets first attention? We've got to make sure that that doesn't happen. You guys have to make sure that that doesn't happen. It's very easy to let it happen. I get it. I love my mobile device. There's a lot of cool things I could do on it, and I could spend all day staring at it. But that would be a waste of a day. We need to make sure we follow guidelines.